Shelters to Shutters is a national nonprofit that helps individuals and families transition from homelessness to being on their own. Today, I talk one-on-one with the executive director of the Charleston area chapter, Daniel Stern, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Daniel Stern, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I know that obviously you're the executive director of Shelters to Shutters, basically the Charleston branch here, which is obviously a national nonprofit that transitions individuals and families from homelessness to economic self-sufficiency through partnerships with multifamily housing companies here in the Lowcountry. Let me ask you this. What's new? What's now with the company?
Well, we launched in Charleston about 5 weeks ago, and we've built some partnerships with nonprofits that do case management, built some partnerships with multifamily apartment industry partners, and we've actually placed our first participant in a job and housing with a company in Somerville.
Wow. Where exactly in Somerville are you seeing most of that happening as far as obviously homelessness?
Oh, sure. So, well, the individual that we placed was in James Island and moved that individual to Somerville for her job. And so she's in downtown Somerville.
Okay. And how many multifamily housing companies do you plan to partner with?
As many as I can.
How do you build a strong, active board of directors?
So we look for individuals that align with our mission. We look for people that are in the apartment industry and people that are supportive of the mission of ending homelessness.
And what ending homelessness, where exactly is that trend right now here in the Lowcountry?
So most recent numbers have the number of homeless in Charleston at about 400. But when you look at organizations, the number of people they serve is in the thousands in some cases. So it's a number well above 400, I believe.
I'm gonna get back to that in just a second, but obviously, Shelters to Shutters brings a national solution to situational homelessness to Charleston, South Carolina, with the support of the Charleston Apartment Association and the Middleburg communities. What is the biggest difference between homelessness and situational homelessness?
So we consider situational homelessness to be someone who's lost their job because lost their home because they lost their job, they've had a medical issue, a natural disaster, things of that nature. When you talk about chronic homelessness, you're talking about someone who's been on the street or without a home for multiple years.
What's that percentage of chronic homelessness here in Charleston, and what's that percentage of situational homelessness here?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but I think that you can see a pretty big influx of people using services all over the Tri-County area for support with for food, for transitional housing. So I'm not quite sure of those numbers, but I believe there's a considerable amount of both.
Now, which percentage of those homeless people are actually using transitional housing?
I'm not sure of the percentage of those people, but there's a lot of great organizations. Some that we're partnered with are an organization called I Am Voices, right, which works with women that are 17 to 24. Megan, she's great. And then we work with Star Gospel Mission, yes, and they work with men and they do transitional housing as well. So a lot of great organizations that are in that space.
Now, who else is in that space when it comes to helping these people get into obviously permanent housing, that is?
So there's a lot of different organizations that work in the housing space. We're a little bit unique in that we're a solution to both, where we do the housing and the employment side. Right. So members of our program, 93% don't return to homeless services. So when you get into our program, you get a job and you get you get a full-time job, you get housing, and you get in with a company, and you're a dedicated employee, obviously, because you're getting out of a very difficult situation. So you tend to stay. And our people in our program stay statistically 4 times as long as employees that they're finding from other sources.
And where are those other sources for employment?
I think for the most part, job boards, Indeed, Craigslist, probably more industry-specific job boards as well.
What are those industry-specific jobs that the homelessness are going to when they leave your program?
Sure. So what the positions we hire for primarily are leasing agent, maintenance technician,
Hmm.
and groundskeeper. So obviously, if you were to leave your company after a certain amount of time, you would get a pretty good skill set to move into different industries. But our folks tend to stay in the apartment industry once they get into our program.
And how many of those people have actually stayed in that particular program?
Sure. So we've placed, since the start of the program, more than 400 individuals and families into our program, and 93% of those, I can't run the numbers in my head, but 93% of those have completed the program and have not returned to homeless services.
And what other homeless services are you providing right now?
So in our program, we do have training modules, and we do pay for some extensive training if we find an applicant that, for instance, for a maintenance technician job, say they have HVAC skills and plumbing skills, but they need some electrical. So in some cases, we may pay for them to get an extensive training in that so that they can very easily get placed into a job.
And how many of those people easily get placed into those particular jobs?
Um, Well, it's interesting to tell. So we've just started. We've placed one individual into a position, and obviously we're looking at different maintenance technician jobs and leasing agent jobs and groundskeeping jobs. So we're just getting started. So I don't really have data, but on the Charleston side.
Now, speaking of the Charleston side, where is the uptick in situational homelessness here?
Well, there are services all over the Tri-County area. So, people are, whether it's, geographic or familial, so they may stay somewhere where they have some family connections. They may stay around where there are services. There's a lot of services concentrated in downtown Charleston, so there's a pretty big population there. But, we've heard about communities in James Island, West Ashley, Somerville, Goose Creek, pretty much in every area.
Now, what are the current trends for situational homelessness here in the Tri-County area?
Well, it's an interesting thing because you have an influx of people moving here. You have rising rent costs, of course. There are people that are losing their homes because they can't afford the rates, and so it is a group of people that is pretty consistent. And so, we're seeing pretty consistent numbers of people seeking services from different organizations and becoming applicants of ours.
Now, how many people have actually lost their homes in the past year here in Charleston?
Not sure of that number. I'm really not sure of that number. But I do know that there some of these organizations that work in this space have provide for numbers of people in the thousands. So
Wow.
I'm not exactly sure of the exact number, but you can tell from people that are seeking services, whether it's temporary housing or food or whatever the case is, it's a pretty big number.
Now, with those people who actually, unfortunately, lost their homes, I should say, how many of those are actually seeking services right now over the past month or so?
Well, I'm not certain of that number, but when you get into a difficult situation, um, Charleston does have a great handful of organizations that can provide you relief in a lot of different areas, whether it's food or temporary housing, medical, whatever the case is. So, I would say that we have a pretty uh, robust amount of services
Hmm.
for people that are getting into a difficult situation. Our, shelters to shutters is a great solution because you take someone from that difficult situation and you put them in housing and you put them in a job, and they get that sense of security and that basic needs for life back in place.
In place. And what are those basic needs of life that the homeless people right now in Charleston are really seeking that they don't have resources to?
Sure. So in our case, shelters to shutters is a great. I call it a solution. It gives a hand up to people that are in a difficult situation and gives them career opportunities in the multifamily apartment space. So you could have someone that is working with an organization, and then they could get referred to us, and they could go through our pipeline and be applying for jobs in the apartment industry. So, from there, it's how hard can I work and how fast can I get as many people into our program as possible.
Now, Mr. Daniel, I know that you started this job just recently. How have you researched yourself inside to learn more about situational homelessness?
Sure. And I've been in Charleston about 20 years. Been in nonprofit for about 12 years. This is my first job in working in homelessness.
Wow.
But looking at other organizations and the work that they do, the great work that they do, and the people that they serve. Talking to our industry partners, so we are aligned with a couple of different partners already that have given us some great information on the community as well. And just kind of, I'm not a native yet, but 20 years is pretty good to kind of know what's going on in the community.
What is going on in the community with situational homelessness that we don't know about?
I think that the thing that I would say is that there are a lot of people going through difficult situations. And when you think about someone who's homeless, you think immediately of mental health concerns, possible substance abuse issues, and people that have been on the street for years or a long time. And I think that we have a lot of people in our population that are going through a difficult time because of a job loss, rising rent costs, and things of that nature. So I think that the thing that I would say is they are your neighbor, they are your friend, they are people, your family, people that your family knows. It's not as far removed as you might think.
And I know when I was in Nashville just a week ago, that was such a big issue there with homelessness. You saw that all over the city. But let me ask you, what is the typical cost of rent here in Charleston right now?
The rising cost of rent?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's a desirable place to live. There's an influx of people moving into Charleston, of course.
Yeah.
So you factor those things in, and it makes a lot of sense that the cost of living is going up.
And where do you all see that going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'm not an expert in that space, but I would say that from industry people that I've talked to, I don't know that there's any relief in sight immediately. You talk about the inventory of places to live and things of that nature. But I would love to say that it would go down, but I don't know that I could say that.
Now, Mr. Daniel, let me ask you. You mentioned this just a few seconds ago in your last answer, but how many of those people in situational homelessness, that is, are actually mental health, victims, and how many of them are obviously dealing with, substance abuse?
Sure. So we work with a lot of different nonprofits and a lot of different missions, and if someone who is going through those types of issues, they're not necessarily disqualified from our program.
Okay.
One of the things that we do at Shelter to Shutters when we're placing someone is we ask that they've been in a support program for a year and are in an ongoing program when you talk about mental health concerns and substance abuse issues. So on the Shelters to Shutter side, we look at just that they have a support system coming into our program. We obviously provide them a mentor, and then they obviously have me, their employee, their company, and the nonprofit that referred them. So we try to build a really strong support system around that person as they're moving from that difficult situation that they're in into housing and employment.
Now, Mr. Daniel, let me ask you this. What are those trends that you're seeing with the homelessness when it comes to mental health and substance abuse?
Well, they do go, in some cases, they go hand in hand. Where you're in a difficult situation. So it's no wonder that some of those things do go hand in hand. But I'm not exactly sure of the numbers and statistics on that, but I think that it's fair to say that a lot of those things do go hand in hand.
Now, how are you targeting the emerging age waves of of homelessness, I should say?
Sure. So, it was one of my goals when we started here to work with organizations like an I Am Voices. And I believe that they start their program at 17 years of age. And so people can go through their program. And so I'm very interested in aligning with organizations that work with the teenage population into, their early 20s, to provide them an outlet. So, we have great organizations that work with people to get them ready to get back into society from whatever difficult trauma that they're coming from. And we want to be that outlet to say, okay, you've gained some skills, you're ready to get back into the workforce. Here's an opportunity.
What is your target demographic?
Our target demographic, I would say, are individuals. We don't really have an age restriction. I would say 18 and up. So that's, it's pretty wide ranging for us. So we look for people that have some experience. So you like that they've been in the workforce at some point. Say, for instance, we're placing a groundskeeper. It's amazing if they've had a year or two of experience in landscaping, so they know the business. Maybe they've worked on a crew or they've run a crew. So we do like to see some work experience, but it's not necessarily a disqualifier.
Now, what is that demographic that you're currently seeing that is making that trend towards, unfortunately, situational homelessness?
Well, I think it can range. I think it can, because I think in a lot of cases you would classify the entire household that got into that situation. So it may be a father and a mother and their children in that difficult situation. So I don't know the numbers on that, but in a lot of cases, it's not just an individual that lost their apartment. It can be a husband and a wife who have a family that have lost their home as well.
Now, how many of those people have you all seen that actually lost their apartments versus their homes?
Well, talking with a lot of different organizations, we hear all kinds of different stories, and we meet all people from all kinds of walks of life, from single individuals to people with families. And I don't think it discriminates between apartment and home or house. So I think it can be both.
Now, what are the characteristics of situational homelessness, Daniel, here in Charleston that will obviously you all, as part of your nonprofit organization, will eventually serve?
So we work with, of course, all kinds of different organizations that serve all kinds of different people and missions. We love to identify people that are ready to get back into the workforce, that have an existing set of skills. So in that case, they may have lost their job, and because they lost their job, they lost their home. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the only reason. So we're looking to serve individuals that have kind of a set of skills, which we provide to our nonprofit partners, so they know this type of skill sets that we're looking for. And then if they need additional training, we can help on that front as well. So just looking for people with the willingness to get back into the workforce, and and serving those dealing with situational homelessness.
Now, Daniel, let me ask you, how many people are in your program currently that are actually job ready?
Sure. So we've placed our first individual, and we have about 5 applicants at the moment.
Okay.
That we feel are able to apply for jobs in the multifamily industry. So I would say that with the work that we do, we could place quite a bit of people. Obviously, this is a great opportunity to get the word out, because talking to you, everybody says if you're doing something big, you got to talk to Quintin. But just getting the word out about what we do and getting our industry partners signed on so that we can move someone seamlessly from a nonprofit referral to interviewing for a job in the multifamily industry.
And what is the state of that multifamily industry right now?
It's certainly growing in Charleston. I mean, I think you're downtown, so you see all the things we built
right here.
But every area is exploding with growth. So new new complexes coming up. And the great thing about what we provide is when we just want to be a different vertical for talent for our industry partners. So they may be looking on job boards and Indeed and Craigslist, and we just want Shelters to Shutters to be another vertical for talent for them. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different jobs and opportunities out there, and it seems to be pretty consistent and growing as obviously more places come online and people move in and things like that.
Now, how many of those people are seeking, or have actually seek jobs, that is, with job boards versus obviously, Indeed and all these other places, Craigslist, for instance?
Oh, you're talking about the on the industry partner side or on
Yes,
the
sir.
individual?
Oh, individuals as well.
Oh, sure. So, on the individual side, I can imagine that, if you're in a difficult situation where you may have lost your job, you're certainly going and looking for different opportunities. Shelters to Shutters may be an option for those people if they've lost their home
Okay.
and they're working with an organization for services. On the industry partner side, I can imagine that they are also in search of talent. I know that kind of the middle part is that talent is needed in our multifamily apartment industry, and we believe we can provide that talent.
What talent do you have now?
Well, the position that we place currently is a concierge.
Oh,
We hire
yes.
for mostly leasing agents, which is client-facing, marketing, clerical type of work. Maintenance technician, which is HVAC, plumbing, electrical work, and those types of things. Groundskeeping, which is more generalized landscaping type of work. So those are kind of the skill sets that we look for.
Well, Mr. Danny, I was just thinking about this, but what stakeholders, and this might be a redundant question, are you partnering with to provide those who don't have a full-time employment with career training opportunities?
So we have a pretty robust online training platform called Edge to Learn,
Okay.
which can get you up to speed on something that you may not know about. So, say for instance, a leasing agent, they may not have industry-specific work, but they may have hospitality work, and they may have marketing or clerical experience. Those are a great starting point to get into our program and take our training modules, and then when you could put those on your resume so that when you ultimately apply for a job, you can say, I have completed these courses which say that I've learned about the industry.
Now, with the growth here in Charleston and really around the South, how is your particular nonprofit organization keeping up with that growth and actually, changing your training modules?
Sure. So, one of the great things about Shelters to Shutters is that Charleston is the 8th city in the program, and we actually have Dallas coming on in the next few months. I don't know if I let the cat out of the bag on that or not, but so, it's great that we have an interconnected group of executive directors working in Washington, D.C., Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, Phoenix, Houston, Dallas soon, and then Orlando. So, we have an interconnected group, and some of them are in the Southeast. So we talk to each other, and we talk about trends and our share industry partners, because in a lot of cases, you may have a company that works with our Charlotte branch that has places in Charleston. So we can make that connection and then bring them on in Charleston so that we're working with apartment complexes under one roof, but in 2 different cities.
Now, you talk about Charlotte and obviously Nashville, my happy place there. But which one of those cities in the South actually has the most situational homelessness?
Well, so Charleston has been on for about a month, and Charlotte, Atlanta, and Nashville have been on for about a year, a little bit more than a year.
Okay.
So, I know that they have placed a great deal of individuals. We've placed 50 individuals this year, and obviously we have a goal to serve much more by the end of this year. And a lot of those are predominantly in the Nashville, Charlotte, Atlanta, and then our Washington, D.C. region as well.
Wow. Besides Dallas, Mr. Daniel, I know you don't want to, expose anything, but where else do you all?
I already did.
Yeah, you already did a halfway. But where else do you all hope to expand next?
Well, with an connected network of cities working together, I would imagine that we would, you stay on the Eastern Seaboard, um, and I think it's an ongoing conversation that we have. We're analyzing markets to see where we could be most effective. We're also looking at our current markets and seeing the work that we've done, and then seeing, okay, what does the next market look like? Where can we fit, and where, interconnectedness in mind, what should we be looking for? So I think it's an ongoing conversation that we have.
Now, in those conversations, Mr. Daniel, how many of your clients have actually actually do have entry level jobs?
So, I'll say that of the people that we've placed, the jobs that we hire for are considered entry level in most cases. A maintenance technician, a groundskeeper, a leasing agent, those are kind of entry level jobs into the multifamily space. And again, 93% of the people in our program don't return to homelessness, so they stay within, at least in the data that we have, they stay within the industry.
Okay, and I know this is another redundant question, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but what
Okay.
results have you and your team seen from support services in order to ensure your clients actually have a successful long term transition out of the program?
Sure. So, what we like to do with people that get placed in our program is surround them with as many services and resources that we can. We get those from our nonprofit partners that are referring because they're already working with that applicant. Then we look at the things that they may need additionally. So, we'll work with other nonprofits in the area to see what other supports we can give them. And we also provide them a mentor, which is an industry specific individual that runs alongside them on the professional side, so that when they get into the apartment industry, they have someone that's already in that space that they can ask questions of throughout the year. So just really wrapping as many services and supports systems around that person as we can while they're in our program.
And let me get back, obviously, to numbers. When do you expect the homelessness figures, particularly situational homelessness figures, to inflate steadily over the next 5 years?
Well, I'll say that if rental numbers stay where they are, and cost of living continues to rise, then this will continue to be a concern. It'll continue to be an ongoing issue. There are a lot of great organizations and a lot of municipalities working on solutions for this, which is amazing. But it's a difficult thing to combat. It's the success of the city, right? But Yeah, I think it's probably something that's going to be an ongoing concern in that time frame that you're talking about.
And what do you expect the time frame to be, ideally?
Well, that would be that's interesting. I'd love to see an opportunity where there's some type of subsidy for people that we need them to work and do the jobs that we need to make the city run, right? But if they are commuting from far away because they can't afford to live there, it becomes a concern. So there's a tipping point that is out there that someone smarter than me knows about. I think that those are things that we need to put in place, and glad that we have shelters to shutters in Charleston to help kind of combat that for people in the multifamily that are interested in working in the multifamily apartment industry.
Now, Mr. Daniel, how many of your clients that you currently have, that is, are actually commuting to their jobs?
So the great thing about shelters to shutters is that when we place an individual, we want them to work and live in the same place.
Okay.
So, immediate transportation is not necessarily a concern. Obviously, they need to get to and from the grocery store and things like that. But we take a big chunk of it away because you work where you live.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And where do you expect those people to, obviously, how many of those people do you expect that to be in those situations like that where they are able to work where they live in the next 5 years?
Oh, sure. So, well, for us, it's kind of a must for our program. A lot of individuals that are referred to us they don't have transportation. Transportation is obviously an ongoing concern for people experiencing homelessness. It's a big concern, transportation just in our area. So being able to alleviate that a little bit by making them be able to work and live in the same place is kind of a must for our program. So that's kind of how we help in that front.
Now, Mr. Daniel, how many of your clients actually have developed children but have no housing or income currently?
Say that one again, Quentin.
Yes, sir. How many of your clients have actually that come into your program actually have children?
So for our program, when you talk about the total applicants, I think 3 of the 5 or 3 of the 6, when you talk about applicants and placements, have children, and so
Okay.
3 would be single.
Now, with all this going on, obviously recruiting a lot of helpers with this particular program. What is your organization's budget right now?
Our budget is in the realm of 150,000.
And okay, and where do you project that budget to be in the next 5 years?
Well, I hope it goes up because that means we're serving more people.
Yes.
So, the great thing about Shelters to Shutters is that we launch and we essentially build the organization from scratch, which is something I have some experience in.
Right.
And we grow as, the services grow. So, I can imagine, a situation where we may identify a candidate in Charleston, but the job may be in Columbia or the job may be in Myrtle Beach.
Right.
And we could move that person to the job.
Right.
So, or we identify someone in Greenville, and we could move them to Columbia.
Right.
So, as we grow and have success and place people and they do well in their jobs and bring on more apartment complex partners, I think we would see our organization
Oh, yes.
grow exponentially.
Now,
And then I would also say, on a national level, we're trying to launch 5 new cities each year.
wow. Wow, that's amazing. And sorry about the delay there. But let me ask you, how many complex partners do you expect to get in the next 5 years?
Again, I want as many as I can. When I talk to apartment industry partners, we just want to get our agreements in place so that when we have someone that may be a good fit for a leasing agent job they can seamlessly move through our pipeline from being an applicant to interviewing and then going through our program and then interviewing for these jobs. So as many as we can get is my answer, and we're talking to as many folks as we can. And one of the great things about our program is that we're partnered with the Charleston Apartment Association.
Yes.
We're their beneficiary organization for the next 2 years. They're an amazing partner, and they're a great place for all different resources for the local apartment industry. And so we're very proud that they're one of the reasons that we're here is that they chose to support what we do, and we just love working with those people as well.
Now, Mr. Daniel, with those partners, how many agreements do you have currently?
We have 3 agreements in place,
Okay.
and we have umpteen more out being discussed and kind of in the discussion phase.
Now, obviously, you are the executive director. What else would you add to your personal development plan that will lead to success for your organization locally 5 to 10 years from now?
Sure. So, I'm one person, and so we're building the organization, and ultimately, we'd love to get to a place where we are a bigger staff, so that we can focus in different areas. And say we do get to that place where we are identifying a candidate in Charleston and moving them to Greenville, that's probably more work than one person can handle. So obviously, we want to grow the organization and bring on additional talent to help us accomplish our mission. That's certainly a goal.
And what will be your next goal in the next 6 months?
My goal by the end of this year is to place at least 10 individuals in housing and employment in the multifamily industry in Charleston. So that's kind of my goal over the next 6 months. We do have a city advisory board, so we are recruiting board members for that. So filling that out completely is also a huge goal. But I would love to see us place at least 10 people by the end of this year.
Daniel Stern with Shelters to Shutters. Thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quentin. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.